related, music, records. I said, this is a rebuttal to the status quo of what's happening right now. So essentially this and the analog realm is diametric to the virtual realm. So, hey man, how are you?
How you been?
Good.
For part 3 of the Jim Georgiou tour, we dive deep into the jazz vinyl rabbit hole with a left turn in the bunch. Please forgive the horrible audio as irate animals driving cars honk their horns, scream, and generally sink lower than the rats who live beneath the New York City streets.
So one of our favorite trombone players of the 1950s is unquestionably Eddie Burke. Eddie had a beautiful, resonant tone, a very lyrical approach to playing his trombone, but harmonically he moved into modern territory. But he didn't abuse the modernism of his technique. So whether he was a classically trained musician or not, I find that he always had unerringly good taste. His records on Savoy, to me, are collector's items. I don't have all of them. They're very hard to find. He did not sell a lot of records. He played did a lot of session work in the 50s for a number of esteemed bands and organizations. But Eddie occasionally had his own session. And this one here is on what might be considered a throwaway label, because they did a lot of easily listening music, which was the Somerset label, which was high fidelity mono back in the day. A lot of these people see flipping through the bins and they just pass on them. But this record here gives this label credibility, because this is a sextet with Barry Galbraith on guitar, Hank Jones on piano, Clyde Lombardi and Ozzie Johnson in the rhythm section. And it's a nice record. And I've seen this record go for $30, $50. I have it out for $15 because for the right person who's got an eye for this, they deserve to have the record cheaply and they'll appreciate the record. It's a nice listen. If you're home on Saturday, cooking dinner with your family, friends, or having people come over and you're just popping this on, it's the type of record that, you know, brightens up a beautiful day and it's tasteful. And it's somewhat nostalgic. It has that sensibility. It has the modern trappings of what every jazzophile wants to hear, but some of these records are a bit nostalgic without being syrupy. So I give the guy a lot of credit for wearing his emotions on his sleeve enough, but without turning people off. Okay, so this is Davy Dodds' esoteric issue of mid-1940s issue, 378, and I would call this an artist coming full circle, because this record is experimental. This record makes one realize is that if jazz is the rhythm of a new art, this guy being responsible for it, the craft that went into this is exhibited within this booklet. I don't even know the personnel on this record. There's a number of drum solos on this record. There are a couple of pieces with accompanying musicians that are more in his chosen oeuvre, kind of indicating where he comes from his origins. But the curiosity of this record is that it extends into almost the avant-garde. It makes you realize there's very little difference between avant-gardism and the birthplace of the music. Okay, so basically this session comprises a number of drum improvisations. These make you realize the art and craft that went into the origin of this music, the rhythm that is what we call jazz. There are two standards on here, Wolverine Blues and Buddy Bolden's Blues, two originals called Albert's Blues and Manhattan Stomp, which he wrote for Don Yule. I think Don might actually be on this record, but there's a small ensemble on this record as well. There are so many records that we could discuss, and over time I will discuss a number of records, but the idea of just arbitrarily taking disparate things off the shelf and sharing them with people, making them realize how much rich material is out there. The liner note is on the inside here. As far as the value of this record goes, I would say when I found this record, the value was probably in the $100 to $150 range. It might be significantly more than that. I haven't looked it up. I basically had this on a shelf for a number of years. I had digitized it. It's in my machine because I like listening to the improvisational tracks. I'm fascinated with the way this guy's mind works. And actually, amongst other drummers who are esteemed drummers who love Baby Dodds, sharing this material with them blew them away. When I gave this as a CD with a replicated cover to Lenny White, and he listened to this, when I saw him again, he's like, bro. I'm like, yeah, bro. So, I mean, obviously Elvin Jones and Tony Williams and the whole plethora that go back to the beginning are, amazing musicians, but it starts here, and we're very grateful for Baby Dodds. So that's our first selection. This record here is by a guitarist named Jimmy Webster. And Jimmy is a very obscure character, a New York character who lived on the Upper West Side in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, off of Broadway. And he had a gig. He had a gig in some big bands. He had a gig playing some mainstream jazz and playing in some bars. But the interesting thing with this cat was that he was originally a pianist. He decided that he wanted to have a very portable existence. So what he wanted to do was take his experience with the piano and superimpose it onto an instrument which was portable. And the guitar was the closest thing that would allow him to do this. So he decided to take up the guitar and superimpose his pianistic technique onto the guitar. So this is a 1959 record on RCA Mono LSP 1942. I originally found this record about 20 years ago, and I was fascinated because he has stereophonic speakers, amplification for the guitar, because he's playing in a pre-Stanley Jordan, pre-Van Halen, pre-Frank Marino tap-touching technique. The interesting thing here is that he's doing what Stanley Jordan does, but obviously we haven't seen his rig, we don't know how the guitar is set up, how high the action is, but he gets beautiful sound out of the guitar. And there are a couple of very moving items on this record. But there are a couple of very nostalgic period pieces treated in a certain way that make it, to me, a very special record. Okay, so the record I've chosen here is a record I had never seen before, and that Kenny is actually going to procure for me today. And this is Eddie "Lockjaw" Davis on a very obscure label called Kickin' and Wailin'. And Eddie "Lockjaw" Davis is an interesting character. He came up from the streets, primarily self-taught, okay, and needing to prove his worth. At a certain point, was making records that were positioning himself as a serious player, akin to like Johnny Griffin, a number of the Chicago guys who were getting around their horn really well. So a number of those records after a while paled. They're not over the long-term records that you want to keep going back to, because they have the fireworks, but music-wise they can get a little bit boring. But that doesn't take anything away from him, because in the right setting, he's made some fine records. Early King records, the quartet record, the early 12 to 500 series is a nice record. It has all the values. It has melody. It has beautiful ideas. A working quartet. But Eddie "Lockjaw" with a nice conga with Ray Barretto behind him in mid-tempo, beautiful stuff. And again, he came out of Basie. I think Basie may maybe reinstilled some of those musical values in him and made him a little bit more secure with himself, so that he'd be able to put across music that would be lasting and endurable.